Okay, we'll get started. We'll probably have a few other folks come in, but I will admit them as they show up. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Participate Pennsylvania Voter Participation Trainings. I'm Pat Clark, and I'm board chair of Keystone Progress Education Fund. This is the second of 4 online trainings that will be taking place each Wednesday in September from noon to 1:30 p.m. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of our project's presenting partners, Keystone Progress Education Fund, PCRG, the Greater Pittsburgh Nonprofit Partnership and the Forbes Fund, the Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations, the National Urban League, the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition, Pittsburgh City Paper, Pittsburgh Capital Star, and the Public News Service. We're also joined today by our host, Allegheny County Council District 13 Representative Olivia Bennett. Olivia.
Sorry, I forgot I put myself on mute. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilwoman Olivia Bennett from the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition. I go by Liv. Today's training focuses on sharing information on resources for voting safely at home and elsewhere, and strategies for helping our counties in recruiting poll workers. We'll feature guest trainers from the Pennsylvania Department of State and Committee of 70, and we'll begin today's discussions on activities being undertaken in Allegheny County with our guest, County Councilwoman and my girl, Bethany Hallam. If anyone has questions for our trainers, please use the chat tool in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. We'll have approximately 20 minutes at the end of today's event to answer those questions. This session is being recorded and will be available at the Pittsburgh City Paper website at pghcitypaper.com and on many of our partner organizations' websites. We're happy to welcome our first speaker, County Councilwoman at Large Bethany Hallam, who's a member of our Allegheny County Board of Elections, and who'll let us know about current initiatives in support of increased voter access and poll worker recruitment efforts here. Welcome, Councilwoman Hallam, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Bennett. I am so excited to be here today. As you know, elections are really my jam, and so I'm really excited that there's so many new things happening in Allegheny County and across the Commonwealth in regards to elections. So specifically the 2 things, as you mentioned, that I'm here to talk about today is poll worker recruitment, which is what I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to end up with some exciting new options for how you can vote in Allegheny County ahead of November 3rd. So regarding poll worker recruitment, and the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link to how you can sign up to be a poll worker in Allegheny County. So I put that in the chat for anyone who has been thinking, maybe I want to be a poll worker, but I just don't know where to go or how to get started. Well, I'm here to make sure that you feel comfortable signing up to help participate in our democracy. So I think one of the challenges has been that for so long, we've always heard the term volunteer to be a poll worker. And so folks think they have to take a day off work and lose out on money and spend 14 hours at the poll for nothing in return. You're in luck because we actually pay poll workers here in Allegheny County. So in the primary, we actually voted to increase the pay for our poll workers to $200 for the day in the primary election. Tomorrow, we have a Board of Elections meeting, and I'm hoping to introduce a measure to increase the pay to $200 again for the general election, because again, we talk so much about hazard pay and protecting our frontline workers. Poll workers are frontline workers. Poll workers are essential workers. So we need to be sure that we are paying them an adequate rate. So I'm really excited for anyone who is listening and is determining whether or not they're going to be a poll worker based off what the pay is going to be. Please tune in to the Board of Elections meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. It is live streamed. So there's a lot of benefits of being a poll worker. It's not just the money. Really, you get to help ensure the security of our democracy. If you remember in the primary election, we didn't have enough poll workers. We need about 6,500 poll workers to staff all of the polls that we have just in Allegheny County alone. 6,500 people to get to come out and sacrifice their day in the midst of a global pandemic is tough enough. So we actually consolidated polling locations down 90%. We only had 10% of polling locations open here in the primary. I am happy to report that we have met that 6,500 goal for the general election. All polling places will be open thanks to the hard work and dedication of so many organizations and so many people who are willing to take their time and work at the polls on election day. But if you haven't signed up yet and you're still thinking of it, it never hurts to have a reserve of extra poll workers because, you know, in worst case scenario, someone gets sick or has to quarantine on election day. So it's really important that we do have that backup, that you could be called to say, hey, we need you to step in and work at this poll. So that link is in the chat. Someone had asked in the chat if I would repeat when and where the poll workers meeting is. So there are, the dates have not yet been announced when those trainings will be. Folks who had previously signed up to be poll workers have already received letters letting them know the options. But the Board of Elections meeting, where we will be voting on a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today, that is tomorrow, Thursday at 2 p.m. And the live stream link can be found on the Board of Elections website. The poll workers training, if you are a judge of election, majority or minority inspector, you will be required to go to a training in person. It's a little over 2 hours. It's mostly a PowerPoint training and also a demonstration of Allegheny County's new voting machines that we purchased last year and were just implemented for the first time this year. So the process is going to be, you fill out your paper ballot at the polls, you take that paper ballot and you scan it through a touchscreen voting machine. The selections that you made will come up on the screen and you can hit yes or no to confirm that the selections on your screen are what you intended, what you marked on your paper ballot. And then it'll print you out a receipt with a barcode to confirm that your votes were counted. So I'm really excited to be able to see live in action these brand new voting machines in Allegheny County. And so if you are not a judge of elections, minority or majority inspector, if you are one of the additional poll workers that work the poll on election day, all of that training will be done via Zoom. So you will be able to do the poll worker training from the comfort of your couch. Somebody had asked me for the Board of Elections link to the meeting, so I will post that. And also, if anybody wants to submit public comments, you have until 2 p.m. the day prior to the Board of Elections meeting, so 24 hours prior to the meeting. You can submit public comments to the meeting via BOE, that's Board of Elections, BOE at AlleghenyCounty.us. So I know I just threw a whole lot of information at all of you about poll workers, but really I saved the most exciting part for last. So one of the things that we're going to be discussing at tomorrow's Board of Elections meeting is the potential for satellite voting locations and drop boxes. So here in Pennsylvania, that might not be something we're familiar with because this is actually the first time that we were ever allowed in Pennsylvania to have these satellite voting locations. And so they were part of Act 77, and there is a fantastic list on the screen. Thank you so much for that because I was about to read them all off myself. So the proposal that we have is it's actually the 3 weekends leading up to the election day. So the 3 weekends leading up to November 3rd. That's the weekend of October 10th, October 17th, and October 24th. So there are 8 locations throughout the county that will be called satellite voting locations. And wait till you hear about this because it is so cool. I am so excited to be able to see these. We had planned to have these locations in the primary, but because of COVID, that plan actually got a little shut down. So this is going to be the first time we're really able to test this out in real life for arguably the most important election of our lifetimes. So the 8 locations are spread out throughout the county. There is the North Park Ice Skating Rink, South Park Ice Skating Rink, the Department of Public Works Garage in Carnegie, CCAC Homewood, CCAC South, Boyce Park Ski Lodge, Shop and Save in the Hill District, CCAC Allegheny, and those are your 8 locations. I think I listed all 8 of them. So what this is you've always heard we don't have early voting in Pennsylvania. That is correct. But what we are allowed to do is what's called an in-person absentee ballot. It is exactly what it sounds like it is. You are able to go and cast an absentee ballot in person at any of these 8 locations on the dates and times that they will be open. In addition to being able to cast an in-person absentee ballot at the county office building where elections division is during their office hours. So you not only have Monday through Friday office hours at county elections division, but you also have these 3 weekends where you can turn in your ballot for your mail-in ballot at a drop box, or actually fill out an absentee ballot in person at these locations. So it's really exciting for folks for a number of reasons. The people that I would say that this, the satellite voting locations are the best option for are, one, people who don't feel comfortable voting by mail, but don't want to stand in the potentially long lines that they'll have on their at their polling locations on election day. You can go to one of these satellite locations that have been strategically placed throughout the county to try to cover as much area as possible. Go to one of these locations, and just like you're at your poll on election day, you will actually fill out a paper ballot. You'll even seal it up into a secrecy envelope and a declaration envelope, and you will have voted right there in person. Now, your vote still cannot be counted until 7 a.m. on election day, unless that law changes. We will find that out in the coming weeks. But as of now, ballots can start being counted at 7 a.m. on election day. So your ballot will be safe, will be secure, will be held with all of the mail-in ballots at the elections division. And that is why you're also able to use drop boxes at these satellite voting locations, where you can take your completed mail-in ballot that you already got sent to the safety and comfort of your own home, and you can go and drop off that ballot at a drop box as well. Again, these options are great for folks who are worried about the timelines that we've heard from the United States Postal Service, who don't have the means or accessibility to get downtown to the county elections division. These are locations that are placed throughout the county so that you can vote in person, albeit absentee. So I'm really excited about this proposal. In my opinion, I don't see any chance that this doesn't pass. This proposal came from the county executive, who is the chair of the Board of Elections. I am the second of 3 members of the Board of Elections, and I will be supporting this as well. So it sounds like we already have 2 out of 3 votes right off the bat. So I'm really, really excited to see this new way to vote in Allegheny County, and hope more than anything else that what this does is increases opportunities for people to vote. Because at the end of the day, what we need to do above all else is remove barriers and remove obstacles so that anyone who wants to vote has the ability to do so safely and comfortably. So I'm really excited about this. I hope you all will tune in on Thursday. Don't forget that link that's in the chat about signing up to be a poll worker. I also dropped the live stream link for the Board of Elections meeting. And before I hop off, if you want me to just answer 2 of the questions that are in there. It says, will any other counties besides Allegheny be addressed today? I don't think that's a Bethany question, and I only really know what's going on here in Allegheny County, but maybe someone else can answer that in a minute. And it says, am I reading this correctly, that there's only one date when the Hill District Shop and Save will be open? So the Hill District Shop and Save will only be open for satellite voting on Saturday, October 17th and Sunday, October 18th. So it is one weekend, both days, 9 to 5 on Saturday and 11 to 7 on Sunday. So yeah, there are, that was one of the locations that actually wasn't already a county facility. We actually had to lease that facility and set up our secure network. That actually is what decides where you can have a satellite voting location. It has to be a county-run facility, a county-owned facility, or be on the county network because of the state's SHORE system, which is basically the election database, for an easier way to explain it. So that really is why we couldn't just set up shop at your local Giant Eagle or do something like that. It had to be a specific network that the voting was done on. And so we do still need poll workers to sign up. We will never, ever, ever turn poll workers away. So please click that link and sign up to be a poll worker. And I'll see you all tomorrow at the Allegheny County Board of Elections meeting at 2 p.m. Thanks so much, Liv. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Bethany, or Councilwoman Hallam, sorry. But that's my sis, so I can call her Bethany. Thanks so much for being here and sharing all of that great information. And yes, please, if you want to make a comment, make sure that you have it in by 2 p.m. today, as 2 p.m. today is 24 hours before the meeting tomorrow. And Councilwoman Hallam graced us with her lunch, so she will have to leave. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Now we're joined by our next trainer, Rachel Boss, who is a community impact manager at the Bureau of Campaign Finance and Civic Engagement in the Pennsylvania Department of State, who will provide an overview of Pennsylvania's Safe Vote at Home resources and state support for poll worker recruitment. Thanks so much, Ms. Boss, for joining us. Rachel, take it away.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go through, I saw there was a couple of questions about whether information would be provided regarding counties outside of Allegheny County. So hopefully I'll be able to cover some of that. So I'm going to provide some information about how elections will be different across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania this year in 2020. And I'll focus primarily on voting by mail, but I will also cover a couple of other changes that you can expect. And I'll also provide some information about serving as a poll worker. So, to start off, as I mentioned, there are some big changes that go into effect this year, and they're very exciting changes. We at the Department of State are very excited about these changes because they make voting more convenient and secure this year. So some of those changes were passed in 2 consecutive pieces of legislation. One was Act 77 of 2019, and the other was Act 12 of 2020. And then prior to that, as Councilwoman Hallam mentioned, there are new voting systems in places in every county across the Commonwealth. So not only will Allegheny County have new voting systems, every county going back to 2018 has updated their voting system. So I'll talk a little bit about that today, in addition to how you can vote from home. The Act 77 reforms that were passed towards the end of 2019, one of the biggest reforms that were included is the option for every Pennsylvania voter to vote by mail. So that means that anyone who is registered to vote in Pennsylvania qualifies to request and receive a mail-in ballot. Act 77 also extended deadlines for returning ballots. So we have had absentee ballots available in Pennsylvania for many decades. The deadline for both mail-in and absentee ballots is now 8 p.m. on Election Day. And I'll repeat that just so that everyone knows, so that absentee ballots and mail-in ballots do not need to be returned ahead of Election Day. They have to be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Another deadline that was changed is that the deadline to register to vote is now 15 days before an election. It used to be even earlier. So the deadline for the November 3rd election is that you have to register by October 19th. In early 2020, Act 12 was then passed to follow up on some of those Act 77 reforms. Some of the things that the legislators seek to do was to make some small adjustments to follow up on those earlier reforms. One of them affects the procedures that you can follow for if you request a mail-in or absentee ballot and you change your mind about voting by mail and you want to vote in person. So beginning with the general election, if you request a mail-in or absentee ballot and you do not return or submit a voted ballot, then you can take your ballot to your polling place on election day, remit it to the judge of elections at your polling place, and then you can vote by regular ballot at the polling place. You have to bring both the ballot and the return envelope, which I'll show you what a return envelope looks like in just a few minutes. And you'll sign a declaration, and then you'll be allowed to vote using the county's regular voting system. If you do not bring your mail-in or absentee ballot with you after you've requested one, but you want to go to your polling place, the only option that would be available for you to vote in person on election day would be to vote by provisional ballot. Act 12 also sped up the amount of time that it takes for a voter registration to be processed in Pennsylvania. So that's what that 10-day hold refers to. There used to be a waiting period, so it would take about 2 weeks for a voter to receive their voter registration card in the mail after they register to vote, and that timeline has now been shortened because the hold period has been removed. And then lastly, a couple of additional changes that were included in Act 12 included that regarding canvassing, which refers to the tabulation or counting of ballots, that process can begin on a pre-canvass period can begin at 7 a.m. on election day so that they can start opening up and preparing mail-in and absentee ballots to be counted beginning in the morning on election day rather than having to wait until the end of the voting day. And where it says challenges on the screen, that refers to the fact that voters cannot be challenged for applying for a mail-in ballot, even though they are qualified to receive an absentee ballot. So I mentioned that we have absentee ballots in Pennsylvania. We have had absentee ballots for many decades. We now have additionally mail-in ballots. Absentee ballots are only for certain voters, primarily voters who have an illness or disability that prevents them from going to the polling place on election day, or voters who will be absent from their municipality on election day. However, any registered voter qualifies to vote by mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania. So that means that if you have any question about which ballot you should apply for or request, just go with the mail-in ballot because every voter qualifies for a mail-in ballot, and you cannot be challenged for voting a mail-in ballot even though you qualify for an absentee ballot. These are some of the deadlines that I already mentioned. So October 19th is the last day to register to vote. October 27th is the last day to apply for a mail-in or absentee ballot. November 3rd is election day, of course, so that's the day when your mail-in or absentee ballots have to be received by 8 p.m. And that's also when polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you encounter a line at your polling place on election day, you must be in line to vote by 8 p.m. and you will be allowed to vote even if you don't get to the voting station until after 8 p.m. You just have to be in line. All right, now for some more information on mail-in ballots. You can apply for a mail-in ballot online, in person, or by mail. So there's the web address right there if you'd like to apply online. That's a really great and convenient option. You can also go to votespa.com to download a PDF, complete the PDF, and you can mail that into your county Board of Elections office. Or as Councilwoman Hallam mentioned, you can go in person to your county Board of Elections office or another site designated by the County Board of Elections to request your ballot in person and then vote that ballot also in person. We call that over-the-counter processing. It's really important to understand, though, that this option is only available after ballots are ready. So right now, the counties are still waiting for a court ruling for them to be able to certify the candidate list that will appear on the ballots. So ballots are not currently ready to be printed and handed over as part of this over-the-counter process. However, once the ballots are ready, you will be able to go to, as I said, the County Board of Elections office or another site that they designate to go in, submit your request in person, receive your ballot as part of that same transaction, vote it, and return it. So as was mentioned earlier, it's not quite the same as early voting, but it essentially allows you to go and request a ballot in person and submit it early. And lastly, for this slide, I do want to mention that if you submit a voted absentee or mail-in ballot, that your vote is final at that point. So if you return a voted absentee or mail-in ballot to the County Board of Elections, then if you were to go to your polling place on election day, you would not be allowed to vote a regular ballot. Another exciting change that was passed as part of Act 77 was the creation of what's called a permanent mail-in or absentee list. Sometimes this is also referred to as an annual list. So when you register to vote or you apply for a mail-in ballot, there'll be a place where you can indicate if you would like to receive all of your ballots for the calendar year in the mail. So the example would be if you apply for a mail-in ballot for the primary election and you check the box to say that you want to be on the permanent or annual list, then you will receive your ballots in the mail for the primary election and then also any special elections and the general election that takes place that year. And you do not have to reapply for each of those elections that take place during the same calendar year. Then, in the subsequent year, you will get an application in the mail to renew your permanent or annual status. So you'll have the option to stay on that list for the following year, but if you do not turn in that completed renewal application, then you will need to reapply to receive your ballot in the mail, or you can go and vote in person without having to bring the mail-in or absentee ballot with you. The Department of State offers a couple of ways for you to track your ballot. So I know we're all eager to receive our ballots and to be able to submit our votes. So after you apply for your ballot, either using the paper application or online, you can go to votespa.com/mail-ballot-status to see the status of both your application and your ballot. In order to if you'd like to also receive an email notification regarding the status of your application and the status of your ballot, then you'll want to provide an email address when you apply for your ballot, and that's either using the online form or the paper application. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit about what you can expect after you receive your absentee or mail-in ballot in the mail. So these are the basic steps. And I'm also going to, hopefully you can still see me in the corner of your screen because I have a sample ballot here that I can show you too. This is not a real ballot. Ballots have not been issued yet for the general election. This is a sample from the primary election that it's a sample. It's impossible to scan or count this ballot for this election. So the first step, when this is the envelope that it would have come in. So then I take the balloting materials out of the envelope. And one of the first things I'll do, I have some instructions here that I can follow for marking my ballot. And then the ballot itself will also have some instructions on it on one side. So you will mark the ballot following the instructions. The second step is that you take your voted ballot, and then this says to pack and seal it. There are 2 envelopes that you need to use to vote and return your mail-in or absentee ballot. So there's my ballot, here's my 2 envelopes. The first envelope is this inner official ballot envelope. So I take my voted ballot and I put it in the inner envelope. You don't write anything at all on this first envelope. So no marks, don't write anything on this envelope. And then you seal it. Then you take your sealed inner envelope, also sometimes called the secrecy envelope, and you're going to put it in this outer return envelope. This envelope has a declaration on one side, and then it's got your county election office address on there. So then you take your secrecy or inner envelope and you seal it inside the return outer envelope. And then you seal that. Next, you're going to sign the voter declaration on the envelope and complete the information that's requested there. It's very important that you sign this outer envelope. And I believe that all counties for this election are providing prepaid postage, but for future elections, you would want to make sure to check to see if postage is provided, and if not, put a stamp on there along with your return address. Lastly, you take your sealed voted ballot and you want to return it. You have a couple of options here. You can return it by mail, so no postage necessary for this election. You can take it to a post office, or you can put it in an official USPS mailbox. The other option is to return your voted ballot in person. So you can take it to your County Board of Elections office or other sites that are designated by your County Board of Elections as official ballot return sites. And I would recommend that you either check your county's website or reach out to your County Board of Elections office to find out where those official designated sites are. So I know I wanted to focus primarily on voting by mail or voting from home, but I do want to mention, just as Councilwoman Hallam said, that if you're planning to vote in person, you will likely encounter a new voting system. So if you have not voted in this year's, if you did not vote in person in this year's primary, then it's actually pretty likely that you'll be voting in person on a new voting system when you go to vote this year. These new voting systems are pretty great. They provide what's called a voter verified paper record. So that means that even if you're marking your choices on what's called a ballot marking device, that ballot marking device is going to print a record of your votes that you can then verify, and that paper record is what is tabulated and counted as part of the final tally for Election Day. The great thing about these paper records is that it allows for post-election audits and recounts, and it allows the voter to verify their votes on the ballot of record. To learn more about the voting system that will be in use in your county, we do have some informational pages on our Votes PA website, and you can go and follow step-by-step instructions for what you can expect when you go to vote in person on Election Day. And then lastly, related to voting in person, Councilwoman Hallam also mentioned the importance of staying safe on Election Day. So, you know, we are urging voters to wear a mask when they go to vote in person. You can also expect your poll workers to be following sanitary and hygienic procedures. They will also be using personal protective equipment, and we have instructed the counties to you know, utilize this equipment to implement social distancing measures and everything that you would expect from a typical trip to the grocery store these days. Poll workers are needed across the Commonwealth. Your county may have a poll worker recruitment site or a form where you can go and directly sign up with your county. The Department of State also offers a form that can be used for anyone in the Commonwealth. So that is available at votespa.com. Get involved. It has some great ways that this will benefit your community and you. So you get to represent your community. If you speak another language, you might be able to make use of those foreign language skills. If you have experience working with disabilities, that's something that's also very useful for serving as a poll worker. I think that there was a question earlier about requirements for serving as a poll worker. So in general, government employees are not allowed to serve. That is a provision of the Pennsylvania Constitution. There are some limited exceptions for members of the Pennsylvania National Guard, although they are not allowed to serve in uniform. Notaries public may also serve, and I believe district judges are also allowed to serve. But like if you're a federal government employee, a state government employee, a municipal government employee, in general, you're not allowed to serve as a poll worker. Counties are also generally looking for folks who can serve for the entire day. As I mentioned, the polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m., but you would be expected to arrive before that time and leave after that time. Other requirements are that for certain positions, you may be required to attend a mandatory training. So you would want to have the time to commit for going in person and learning about the new voting systems, as well as learning all the processes that you would need to follow on Election Day. But it's a really amazing opportunity. I know our Secretary of the Commonwealth, Kathy Bookfar, her first involvement in elections was that she served as a poll worker, and she said that she's carried that experience with her as a really formative one throughout her life. So I really encourage anyone that is interested to fill out the form on our website or reach out to your county and get involved in that way. I also just want to mention that some counties are also in need of polling places. Due to COVID-19, some places that had traditionally served as polling places, such as long-term care facilities and nursing homes, will not be available to be used as polling places in order to reduce the possible risk of the spread of COVID-19 to residents. So if you are a proprietor of a space or, I guess if you work for a business or other organizations where you think, you know what, we have a bunch of large spaces or maybe just one large space that may be appropriate to be used as a polling place, you can contact me and I can help coordinate if there is a need in that election district for a polling place. Where places that are suitable for use as polling places are accessible, community centers or recreation centers, big rooms with a lot of space that would allow for social distancing and voting equipment, and that have ramps and other accessible features are particularly helpful. If you're not available to serve as a poll worker, or you don't have a location that could be serve as a polling place, there are some other ways that you can get involved. The Department of State has a Ready to Vote toolkit, which is a voter education toolkit available on our website. It includes posters, flyers that you can print, newsletter content, an example of that is on the screen, web banners, digital images, social media posts. So if that's something that you're interested in looking at and seeing what information you can grab from there and share with your network, please feel free to go check it out. The link is on this slide, so that's votespa.com/R2V toolkit. You can also feel free to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter. And I just want to say, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So the Department of State's social media accounts are a really great source for getting trusted and accurate election information. And you can be that person in your feed that's always sharing good information and never sharing bad information. I believe that is it. So I'll stop there, hand it back over.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks so much for that information. And I love Votes PA. Like I said last week when Steve was on, I call it Vote Spa because it just sounds relaxing and a place where I can get all information while kicking my feet back or something. So let's everybody go to the Vote Spa and get our information about voting, get involved, get registered, all those great things. So now we're being joined by our next trainer, Lauren Castilla of Community of 70, who'll update us on initiatives underway in the Philadelphia area to support safe voting, vote at home, and poll worker recruitment. Thanks so much, Lauren, for joining us, and take it away.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm totally stealing Vote Spa. I'm done. That's the official position of the Committee of 70. Hi, everyone. I am Lauren Crisella. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer here at the Committee of 70. I'm also the President of the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia. So in my day job and my hobby, this is what I love to talk about. So I'd love to talk a little bit. Well, the Committee of 70 is a 116-year-old nonpartisan, nonprofit institution in Philadelphia. We are dedicated to good government and fair representation, right? Efficient, effective elections have been part of our history since 1904. And we are facing a doozy. So we've got the long lens of history, and it's focusing us for 2020. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we're working on, resources that are useful across Pennsylvania. Of course, we tie into Vote Spa as often as we can because that information is so terrific. But we've added some additional resources, including some great tools for people interested in being poll workers, even before you get placed or early in the process to help you decide. So let's go. We vote. Here's our initiative that we launched earlier this year that has been going honestly gangbusters. Our current reach is about 500,000 people in Greater Philadelphia. We're looking to expand that across the Commonwealth. This program really takes a lot of good research and puts it into practice that says communities are good motivators for behavior change. So is that. So if you have a trusted person, you're a member of a community, right? You have trusted messengers within that community, whether it's the boss at your job, the leader, the pastor in your church, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working with organizations to amplify the resources and the messaging for this election. And we provide terrific election briefings and info sessions that, much like Rachel just did, walks people through the process of choosing their path for this election, whether that's vote by mail or voting in person, and gives people the resources and an opportunity to ask questions, because our election officials are kind of being bombarded right now, and it might be hard to get somebody on the phone. And if people don't have easy access there, there's a lot of kind of intimidating pieces and questions they might have that we can help solve. So we've got you covered. So this is some of what the Committee of 70 is providing for voters across Pennsylvania. If you go to wevote.70.org, hopefully somebody will drop that in the chat, you'll find a variety of resources. So one is this awesome communications calendar with a toolkit with all kinds of branded and unbranded graphics and sample messages to share via email and social media. And then also the ability to do these webinars, right? There's a sign up form, and we're happy to do it for any organization or community across the Commonwealth. We're expanding more and more as word gets out about these terrific resources. So other ones, which I will also walk you through, our BYO ballot tool. This is fueled by Ballot Ready, which is a terrific firm out of Chicago. But we painstakingly go through to make sure that every candidate on any ballot in Pennsylvania is available in there. So if you live in Pennsylvania, you put in your address into this tool. I have another slide later, so we'll get into the details on that. But it works anywhere in Pennsylvania, and it's a great comprehensive tool to learn more about the candidates that you're voting on. Another terrific tool is our Studio C70. So interviews that we do with election officials, poll workers, all leaders and national experts that we're relying on, people from the National Vote at Home Institute, election officials in other states that have more experience with universal kind of vote by mail opportunities. So a lot of learning opportunities there for us. So I highly recommend you check that out. We have a YouTube page. You can also find them on our Facebook video, the Facebook page in the video section. Another cool app is our Committee of 70 app. So if iOS, Android, and it basically is a hub of all of these resources I'm mentioning, and it allows communities to gamify their civic engagement. So you get points for taking different civic actions. You watched the Studio C70 video, you completed your ballot, you learned about the candidates, you get points, and you can compete against people in your organizations or from organization to organization. All right. So this is that BYO ballot tool I mentioned, ballot.70.org. Anywhere in Pennsylvania, type in your address. You'll see everybody on your ballot, your specific ballot, including ballot measures and explainers when we can. This also includes interviews, surveys that we've sent out to all of the candidates. If they have responded, their answers are listed verbatim in that site really easily. You can pick and save your ballot so that when either your vote by mail ballot comes or you head into the polls, you have that really handy, and it makes the whole experience that much easier to cast an informed vote. And also at the end of this, if you see up here, make a plan to vote, which is scientifically proven to increase turnout when people actually intentionally set a planned vote. So this will let you choose to vote by mail and connect you to all the resources that you need to do that, or make a plan to vote in person on election day. It'll eventually, 20 days before the election, it'll help you find your polling place. It'll put a calendar appointment on any calendar you have, and then send you reminders, which is terrific. All right, something I wanted to talk about is a big piece of the election briefing sessions that we give, and it's kind of our messaging right now, is to combat some of that misinformation and disinformation that Rachel referred to in her presentation. There's a lot swirling out there. And we want to make sure people have the facts when it comes to vote by mail. Of course, this is a personal decision, and if you want to cast your vote in person, feel free to do that. Take all the safety precautions. We'll get through this too. But for the people who want to vote by mail, we want you to feel confident that your vote will be counted, and make sure you have the facts before making any decisions on this time. So the first one, voting by mail will lead to voter fraud. This is probably the most common allegation against voting by mail, I guess you could say. The truth is that voter fraud is exceedingly rare. And even though this system is new in Pennsylvania, it's not new to America. There are other states that have been doing this for a good long time, and they figured out security procedures and processes that make this a very safe and very effective way to cast a vote. And fortunately, we're learning from the best, right? There's other places and nonprofits out there dedicated to making sure this goes well, and Pennsylvania is really benefiting from their expertise. For instance, Oregon has been voting by mail for 20 years. And this is the rate, I don't even know how to actually say that out loud, but it's really rare, right? This is lots of zeros after that decimal point. There are, and we'll get to that on this side, the ballot tracking tool that Rachel referred to is one of those pieces of security that really should be able to give you the confidence you need to know that your ballot was canceled or counted. And if it gets lost in the mail, or if it never gets to you, you have this tracking tool to identify that and nip that problem in the bud early in the process, or at a time that you can do something about it, right? So if you apply for your ballot after, the Department of State announces that ballots are being mailed out, or your county announces that they're ready to go, and it's a week and you didn't receive it yet, it's 10 days, you haven't received yours yet, you can check your ballot status and see if it's been mailed. You can contact your county administrators and see if you should be concerned, or if they can send you a new one. They'll invalidate that. If anyone finds that ballot is no longer valid, they won't count it, right? That's what that barcode says. And you'll get a new one and you can vote on it. This is also the way that this works, this whole ballot tracking and the mailing system and mailing it back, is if you do it early. If you wait till the last minute, you really don't have those options, right? If it gets lost in the mail, the turnaround time at each of those steps. So the earlier, the better. If you're considering voting by mail, I would say apply today, and your deadline to return your ballot should be the day after you receive it. Take the 24 hours, fill it out, get it back. I will say I am voting by mail in this election. That's how confident I am that my vote will be counted. I do think I will drop it in a Dropbox as soon as those become available. We've got various plans across the Commonwealth for how those will be rolled out and when, but we're feeling pretty confident that will be an option. At the very least, I would be able to take it to my county's office in City Hall. All right, vote by mail gives one party an unfair advantage. So it's really, the only thing it really does do is increase turnout. So if you live in a place that is overwhelmingly one party over another, you might think it might have the appearance of having a party advantage, but it really is just increasing overall turnout. It really removes some barriers for people to the ballot box that now increases voter turnout. So you see in places that have universal vote by mail, their turnout gets up around 96% in presidential elections. And typically we're in the 60s, like we're going to be over 70% probably in this one with like historic turnout, but it really does make a big difference. And the more people do it, the more confident they are in the system. All right, so this is another set of tools that we've been working hard to create. And we're partnering with the Voter Project, and this group is the state partner of Power the Polls. If you've seen powerthepolls.org, that's getting a lot of national attention for their recruitment work. I know that there has been a flood of people applying to do this, which is terrific, exactly what we wanted to see. And we wanted to make sure that people, all of these new people coming into this process, that they felt confident in their ability to be a successful poll worker on election day. We're working closely with our county commissioners in Philadelphia, and working with the Voter Project is working with counties across the Commonwealth to make sure that this supplements the training, the mandatory training you would receive from your county to do this. So we created this first session is so you want to be a poll worker. And we've had kind of gangbusters attendance because people just need the basics. This covers, is this right for me? It's a really long day in Philadelphia. There are no split shifts, right? You have to come, around 6:30 in the morning, and we don't know, depending on the lines and when everything wraps up at the end of the day, you might be there until 10 o'clock at night. We don't know. I do suggest if anyone can put pressure on Lyft in your area or Uber, Lyft in Philadelphia will be providing free rides to and from the polls. So if that's, I would strongly encourage people to advocate that happens statewide. That is a terrific resource, especially for people who might be deployed as poll workers into parts of the city they're not familiar with, and for having to be there so early in the morning and late at night. It's a really nice resource. So that info session basically helps people make up their mind. And one of the things that we walked through a little bit in that first session, but certainly in the second one, are these fantastic resources from the partners at Stanford MIT's Healthy Elections Project. They're working with us on a variety of things, but they have really done a phenomenal job of putting together a suite of resources to make voters feel confident that they'll be safe when they go to the polling place, and then also all the things that poll workers can do to prepare for that long day in PPE. A lot of us, you might wear your mask for 40 minutes when you go to the grocery store, but a 16-hour day is a different animal. So they give all kinds of tricks and tips for making sure that happens and for staying vigilant. And I really strongly encourage everyone to check out their Healthy Elections website that has the sample deck that we use in our trainings, and then also a bunch of other resources that are really helpful in managing the COVID risk around the election. So the additional trainings beyond that, Poll Worker 101, this first session we've created will be statewide. This will be available to poll workers across the Commonwealth and will be relevant. And it deals with a lot of federal law and state law around voter suppression and voter protection. So just because poll workers play such an important role in making sure that voters are enfranchised. So we want to make sure everyone feels confident that they know who should be voting on a provisional ballot and what those laws are and all of that good stuff. And then we're also going to include the COVID-19 training in that first session. Second training session is what to expect when you're expecting a lot of voters. We developed a suite of resources that are now being shared as a model. They're very specific to Philadelphia, but they would be a very good model for every other county in the Commonwealth. Basically to make it easy to set up these polling places. When you're a judge of elections or you're working for the first time, it is a lot of work to set up that polling place in the half hour before polls open. And there's other little pain points that happen throughout the day with voters who wait maybe in a long line, show up to the front, and then they're not in the poll book. And then they realize, like, oh wait, I might be in the wrong spot. Did you move my polling place? Especially in light of the pandemic, we're going to see a lot of polling locations move. Rachel mentioned the need for people to volunteer their locations as polling places. So with that leads to confusion for voters who are used to voting in the same place. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So we're creating signs that have QR codes that take you right to the polling place location finder website, right? And other things that make it easier on poll workers. They're not dealing with that at the desk when people check in. Same with explaining all the different materials, all of that good stuff. We're hoping that this will have an impact on a positive impact on elections, not just this year, but in years to come too. So I kind of flew through a lot of that. I'm happy to go through. These are all the different ways to connect with us and find our materials. As Rachel said, we are also that 116 years of nonprofit, nonpartisan good government work has built up a lot of trust, certainly in the Philadelphia region. And we are very conscious about the materials that we publish And we're always a good spot to share resources on all of these social media sites if that's what you'd like to do. So I'm excited to get to the questions and if there's other places we can dive in.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for that presentation and really going myths around mail-in voting, because I think that is something that this administration is trying to play upon to suppress folks and not have voter turnout. So I thank you for going through those so thoroughly. So now I'm joined again by Pat Clark as our training partners begin answering your submitted questions. If you like a question answered, please submit via the questions icon at the bottom of your screen or the chat at the bottom of your screen. You can also use you can also share any additional resource connections or links you'd like everyone to know about, and we'll share those out to all participants. So we're going to go and welcome Pat back. Hi, Pat.
Howdy.
And check our chat and see if we have any questions.
All right, I've got a good one, and we have several, so I anticipate we'll spend our full half hour of questions here if we can. I'll also make sure that before we end today, there are a couple of things that we want to update folks on regarding some nonpartisan voter participation events that are going on, in addition to the information you've already received. But let's start with those questions. And here's an open one I'll leave for either Lauren or Rachel. How can folks check where their polling location is this year? An evergreen question.
We have one in that ballot.70.org tool. I know that Philadelphia County said 20 days, they're not going to be prepared to really announce it until that deadline 20 days out from the election because there's so many moving pieces this year. But certainly your county site, there must be a polling place locator on Votes PA, Rachel.
There certainly is. We have a polling place lookup on votespa.com, but I agree, Lauren, that it's going to be a really good idea this year to wait until about 2 weeks out from the election to go and check and look for your polling place, just to make sure that counties have updated the information in our voter registration database so that you're getting accurate information about where you should plan to go.
And Pat, can I jump in just with one piece that I neglected from my presentation? I do want to emphasize everyone that everyone start normalizing election week, not election day. Election day is now in-person voting day, and we will very likely not have a winner on election night. And that doesn't mean that the system is broken or that there was fraud or it's rigged or shenanigans are at play. It's just going to take time to count all of those mail-in ballots, especially if they don't change the canvassing deadlines.
That's great. I'm glad you pointed that out. I know that was something everybody, when we were first talking with partners about what we should present out in this general election series of trainings, messaging was an important one of those. We didn't set aside an entire training about messaging. That seems a little, I don't know, superficial, but I think that's a really important thing that we embed into all of the trainings. So Lauren, Rachel, if you would talk a little bit more about effective recruitment of poll workers, how we message around that. I know one of the things that Keystone Progress Education Fund has learned through our work this year is that it's really good to not talk about vote by mail so much as voting safely or voting safely at home. What are some of the other things that are good approaches for folks?
Rachel, do you want to talk about we've had an abundance of applications to be a poll worker. So I think really tying speaking of the messaging and the way we got the word out, we use trusted community partners to get into places that have a lot of need for poll workers, right? Where it's 4% fill rate, and say, this is for your community. We'll do our best to place you in that community. Democracy's essential workers, right? The frontline workers in this election are poll workers, right? So messaging around that has been really successful, and then making it easy and getting back to people, right? So that's when people sign up with our voterproject.com/C70 link, we're able to immediately connect them with those training opportunities and keep them interested and informed as they go through that process, whether they get placed or not, depending on what that need is. But Rachel can certainly speak to the recruitment blitz that's happened across the state.
Yeah, so I agree, Lauren. We've been blown away by the amount of response we've gotten from people who are completing our poll worker interest form on Votes PA. Like, if you had told me at the beginning of 2020 that we would have the response rate that we have now, I would have just not believed you. So I think one thing that we're trying to do now is really emphasize that the requirements, just to be honest, and that it's a long day and training is mandatory. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity, and I wouldn't want to discourage anyone who's interested, but counties really need folks that are serious about committing to showing up and being really meticulous and, representing their community and really being in it as for the whole day and, with patience in front of mind and just paying attention to detail and all of those things. So, I think we have lots of interested people, and what the feedback that I've received from counties is that they need those people who are also willing to take leadership positions in polling places, and willing to do ballot reconciliation and compare, the counts from the machines at the end of the night to the numbered list of voters and all of those kind of really detail-oriented things that poll workers do. In addition to the folks that are able to, do customer service for 13 hours, which is an incredibly hard feat too. So both of those skill sets are needed.
Yeah, anyone in retail who's been laid off from a mall closure or something like that, that your skill set is so needed for this. People who can handle those types of customer experiences are really valuable. So I don't know, I also felt really, there's a lot of there's a lot of things to worry about and things to have anxiety about in the run up to November, but that has been a true bright spot in all of this, that these recruitment efforts are working and that people are really stepping up to serve their community.
Yeah, I think people really want to do something, they want to participate, and that's awesome.
It is awesome. So on that same note, what other resources are needed for election and polling places other than just poll workers? So you're talking about, the overflowing response that we got for poll workers, but what are other needs that we are seeing are going to see needed, like PPE, for example, since we are still in the midst of a pandemic? Can you speak a little bit about that?
I'm happy to go, Rachel.
Why don't you start us off? Yeah.
So we always need nonpartisan election, poll watchers, right? And volunteers at the polling places. So there's partisan ones that get their certificate and they're allowed to be in the polling places. But we also have a big need for people outside the polling places to be ambassadors, concierges, I don't know how you want to put it, but people who are trained and who will get the information that they need to be able to help people identify before they wait in that long line that they're in the right spot, that they have what they need. If they're a first-time voter, they have their ID, things like that. That is a really big need, and I strongly suggest people go to protectthevote.net. Common Cause PA has a fantastic operation. If you're not comfortable going to polling places, the other option is to do election protection work from your phone in the run up to election day, and you can find those opportunities with Common Cause PA too.
And in response to the question about PPE, I think the needs will really vary by county in terms of whether there are specific materials that they are still in need of. I think if when we're talking about potential PPE donations, I think some of the things that are in demand for elections are the same things that are in demand everywhere in the country. So things like face shields, plexiglass are hard to come by. So if you have access to that kind of equipment in large quantities, and you're interested in supporting elections, by all means, reach out to me and I can do my best to put you in touch with, you know, the appropriate people at the Department of State that are coordinating PPE. We are providing personal protective kits to all of the counties for all of the polling places. So there is PPE that is being distributed across the Commonwealth. I'm sure that the counties have wish lists too that are not completely fulfilled. So, you know, I don't know offhand what is on that list. I see Lauren, you want to jump in here?
Pens, extra pens.
Okay.
So if people are skeeved by touching the same pen, voter after voter, you're going to see a lot of them disappear. People might bring their own, which is always a good idea too, as on the voting side. But if anyone can donate pens, that would be great. They have to be politically neutral.
Right.
And I also posted in the chat information on a couple of things, the protectthevote.net locally, but also 888hourvote.org and their 888-hour-vote number are both really, really helpful in terms of election protection, and they've been around forever, and they collect good, solid, reliable, authenticated data on what actually is a problem in our elections, each and every election. I also posted something on Business for America's program, their Operation Vote Safe program, which is encouraging and mobilizing the business community to provide PPE equipment that's available for poll workers too. So if you want to support that initiative, that's a good one that is helping to build additional resources from our friends in the private sector. We have another, speaking of business, I'll do the money part of it. Good question here. Is there any funding still available in the region, or I'll say the state, to support get out the vote work for community organizations such as printing and other costs? And I guess I'll start by saying there may be, if folks want to have me follow up directly with them, I can let you know about a couple of conversations that I've recently had where our organization is trying to, Keystone Progress Education Fund, we're trying to plug gaps in resources out there, and as best I can, I'll make sure that we get information out to other organizations that are looking for resources too. And yes, I believe Paul O'Hanlon has corrected me. Thank you, Paul. I couldn't copy it and paste it. It is 866 our vote. I was deeply wrong. Don't listen to me. Listen to our friends at the Department of State. They know everything. And Paul O'Hanlon. So any other comments on money out there that or other resources that might be available?
The Voter Project is funding, I think they're in 14 counties, so you'd have to check, but they have a funding for small grants for either social media, boosting posts, and then their small projects.
All right, thanks. So some folks are concerned about images and info circulating online about mail being lost or tampered with. How can we assure voters that their mail-in ballots will be counted other than ballot tracking?
That's such a good way. The ballot tracker is such a good way to ensure that.
I know, but you know, we have to have options. we live in the era of options, so folks want options.
I would say, well, that is the definitive way. But if it is a concern, that's where drop boxes will come in that'll be a huge resource. And for people who just don't want to take that step, I'm going to drop mine off. Yeah, I'm going to drop mine off just because things are very busy, and if I don't remember to check the tracker or something like that, I still want to have that option. So I think that's
No, that's a great point, Lauren. That like delivering your voted ballot in person is a good way to make sure that it is delivered, and you should deliver your voted ballot yourself. So you're not allowed to have someone else deliver it. You're right. You're not allowed to have someone else deliver your voted ballot for you. And there are some very limited exceptions for voters with disabilities who authorize a designated agent and that you have to follow a very specific process in order to do that. I would also say that if you don't receive your ballot and there is not time to request a new one, the fail-safe option is still to go and vote in person at your polling place on election day. You will be allowed to vote by provisional ballot. That's a fail-safe option that's existed for a long time, and that option is still available.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree. My favorite place is the vote spa. So I feel like that's a great place to do everything. But, had to ask. So is the Department of State or any department within the state doing anything to support long-term care residents to be able to vote?
We are working with our partner agencies to make sure that we're sharing information that can be shared through like the Department of Health, the Department of Human Services. So yes, we are sharing that information about the voting options through our networks. And I believe I also we've distributed educational materials as well to nursing homes across the Commonwealth. I believe actually that's in process. So that's an excellent question. And, we do want to make sure that those residents do know what their options are for voting.
And that's something that the Committee of 70 is about to turn our attention to. We had dedicated a lot of resources to poll worker recruitment, and now that has gone well, we're able to reallocate that. That's exactly the community that we are hoping to serve. So Rachel, just separately, we should connect on that to make sure we're
absolutely, yeah.
I'd also pile on with that question just a little bit. Are there groups out there? Are there facilities? Are there businesses or nonprofits that run facilities that are doing a good job of both safety and making sure that their residents vote and have access to the vote and do so safely, that you're aware of?
So what I've been seeing is that there are definitely organizations that are keeping this as a priority. What we have also seen is that people will flood those communities with like paper applications or those paper, which then adds to that backlog and the overwhelming number of paper applications that need to be processed by the county. So we're hoping to work with those people who are interested and who have identified themselves. There's a few, I'll go back, I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but a few alliances of these types of facilities and organizations that are working together on this. And we want to make it as efficient and effective as possible for both sides, right? For the user, for the person there to actually apply, and then also on the county side to make sure it's as easy as possible for them to process.
I'm going through the chat and I'm looking at some questions, and I found a pretty good one here from Angela. If you want to be a poll worker, should you request a mail-in ballot?
Yes. That's our advice to everyone in our presentation. You just don't know where you're going to be placed. And if you're going to have time, if your own polling place where you're working is swamped and you can't get away, or if it's too far to get back to your division precinct to cast your own ballot. So we are just strongly recommending anybody who's interested in working the polls vote by mail.
Great. So we have a question from Jim also. He's a recent retiree wanting to be involved. He said, our info is great today, but he's feeling a little bit of like information overload. So is there some place that he can go or reach out to where somebody can kind of walk him or talk him individually through where he might best serve?
I feel like my internet's breaking up, so if you can't hear me, let me know. But the Committee of 70, if they call our phone number, we have a dedicated team of volunteers and staff members who will, right now you have to leave a voicemail because we're not in the office, and we'll call you back. And our team has been really terrific about walking people through various their vote by mail ballot, et cetera.
Thanks. And it might be my internet. I'm having a shady internet day, apparently.
Me too. Me too.
But lastly, or last from the chat, How complicated is it to submit a provisional ballot, and does anything need to be done after Election Day to verify your provisional ballot being?
So what you can expect from the provisional ballot process is that the provisional ballot is a special paper ballot, and there are very specific instructions that you'll receive. I think in some cases they're printed on the provisional ballot envelope, and the poll worker can also instruct you on how to complete your provisional ballot and how to properly complete the envelope. So it will be completed at the polling place. Generally, they would have like a provisional ballot table, like a different station that you would go to that's different than the regular voting station to complete that ballot. And you just want to make sure that you follow all those instructions and don't leave the polling place until you're all the way done. You get a provisional ballot receipt after you've completed the process, and you can take that with you, and then you can check after the election to see whether your provisional ballot was counted. And basically the reason it is called a provisional ballot is that the county does checks on the back end to make sure that you're an eligible voter and that you have not already submitted a mail-in or absentee ballot before they count the provisional. So that process takes a few days. You can call the Department of State at 1-877-VOTES-PA and enter your provisional ballot number to get an update. So that's one way that you can check up on it. If there's something that happens where you're issued a provisional ballot and you think it was an error and you want to make sure that you clarify the error with your County Board of Elections, you should contact your County Board of Elections the day after the election, or like in a couple of days after the election, if you need to provide information that they would need to consider in order to determine whether to count your ballot.
Thank you so much. And I did drop the number in the chat that you just shared. So I believe we've asked all of our questions. So I'm gonna toss.
I have one.
Oh,
Well,
well, you're
it's not a
closing
question.
anyway, so it's your show now.
I think there was one more message down there too, Liv, if you can check and see what that was added. But I wanted to make sure Paul O'Hanlon, I can attest to his expertise regarding emergency ballot applications, as he had me running around to various hospitals on election night 2016. He pointed out, and I think it's worth repeating this from the chat, Act 77 also changed the requirements of the emergency absentee ballot application to simplify that process as well. 1, no physician's signature is required. 2, no notary is required. And 3, no appearance before a judge for approval is required, all of which will definitely simplify the process for patients and other election day efforts for hospitalized voters. So thanks for putting that in there, Paul. Anything, Rachel, in addition to that we should know?
No, it's also thank you to Paul for pointing out those changes to the emergency ballot. So those are for folks that have an unforeseen, medical or other emergency that prevents them from going to the polling place on election day that they didn't know about, or that occurs after the deadline to request a mail-in or absentee ballot.
And I also have to point out, this is 2 training sessions in a row where timing has been just impeccable in terms of my my wonderful neighbors starting to either mow the lawn, or in this case run a tree chipper. So excuse any background noise that comes up. But in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen real quickly. We mentioned earlier the voting at the Shop and Save shopping center, the former Shop and Save shopping center up in the Hill District. I wanted to make sure that you're all aware the All In for Voting bus tour is stopping in Pittsburgh tonight on the 16th, Wednesday, that's tonight, 6 p.m. There's a voter registration drive that goes until 9:30. And then at 7:30, as a part of that, they're doing a film screening, not a screaming, that I believe is a documentary that features Stacey Abrams' initiative around protecting the vote. That's at the parking lot at the former Shop and Save at 1850 Center Avenue up in the Hill District. And we also just have some very basic information that the bus tour is going to stop tomorrow, the 17th, in Philadelphia somewhere. I don't know who the partners are on that or where it's going to be in Philadelphia, but I'm presuming, I think that the premiere of that film on Amazon is in the next couple of days. So my guess is that Amazon's going to be doing a job of promoting that, and you all will find out more information about that, I'm sure. So I'll leave that info up there so that people can grab that. I do know from what Councilwoman Bennett was able to connect us with and State Rep Jake Wheatley that the folks at One Hood and One Hood Media have been instrumental in getting that thing together here in Pittsburgh. So absent any further questions or issues or good thoughts.
All the good thoughts.
All good thoughts. And thank you, Lauren, for hobbling along with your bandwidth issues. We heard you, but the end of almost every statement was a little, but
that's just how I talk.
We got through okay. And Rachel, thank you very much. And I'll thank in absentia Councilwoman, County Councilwoman Hallam for participating. All of our partners at PCRG, Councilwoman Bennett for your kind support, and all of our partners at GPNP and all the active folks who've been supporting. Monica, I think you're on here, so thanks so much for your technical assistance in getting you and your staff, my Zoom up to speed, at least a little better than last week. So with that, I'm going to hop over to my script that I should know because I wrote the thing. And with that, we'll bring today's training session number 2 to a close. Please join us again a week from today, Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, from noon to 1:30 p.m. for our next training, which will focus on lessons learned from the primary election and preparations for a better general election. That's going to feature our trainers from Philadelphia's Committee of 70 again, and we'll also feature Councilwoman Bethany Hallam again, and we'll have, I think, a robust discussion about what we can do proactively in approaching what will be most assuredly one of the more challenging elections of our generation and probably the last few generations. So join us. Know that our recording of today's session, as the first session was, are going to be available at Pittsburgh City Paper's website. That's pghcitypaper.com. And many of our partner organizations are also posting on their websites. Everyone who's signed up to participate through the Keystone Progress Education Fund sign-up page, I have been tracking down. I'll make sure that before our next session, everybody gets a reminder, and I'll also forward along links both to those videos for the first 2 sessions, as well as the slide decks from everybody's presentations. And with that, thank you all very much. Appreciate your caring and stepping up and giving your time and resources to American participatory but democracy here in Pennsylvania. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.